the winner of this bout, and new
Well, 2020 just continues to suck, doesn't it? Man, oh man. What's going on, everyone? GoodMicWork commentaries back at you with some sad news to report. Most of you, I'm sure, are aware by now that legendary WWE ring announcer Howard Finkel passed away today at age 69. And this one is extremely sad because we just lost Mean Gene Okerlund a year ago, back in 2019. And I think a lot of people consider Mean Gene Okerlund to be the voice of wrestling. Well, I consider Howard Finkel to be the voice of WWE. For longtime wrestling fans and even young wrestling fans of all different ages, I'm sure Howard Finkel's voice is tattooed somewhere on your brain. For others, the tattoo is just a little bigger. And for me, Howard Finkel was in the WWE before I was even born. And I'm an old man. He has been there a long time, and he's seen a lot throughout the years, calling some of the most historic matches from every single time period in wrestling. He started working for Vince Sr. in 1975. He's credited with being WWE's first ever employee, I think when the switch was made in 1980. He was front and center in Madison Square Garden during the 70s. He called some of the most famous Bruno Sammartino matches, Bob Backlund matches, Superstar Billy Graham matches. He was always there, right in the middle of the ring, using that microphone that would drop from the ceiling and wearing those bomb-ass tuxes. Oh my God, go back and check out Howard Finkel and some of the shit he used to wear. It was fabulous. And I'm even old enough to remember Howard Finkel, and Mean Gene for that matter, when they had hair. So for me and so many others, this one just cuts deep because so many pieces of our childhood just continues to crumble. And I've been thinking about Howard a lot. I think I even brought him up on the podcast a few weeks back that I was just curious about his health. Because last we heard, and this was a couple of years ago for me, last I had heard anything about Howard Finkel and his health, it was not good. I believe a stroke was involved, and he had some other health issues, and he was really in a decline. He seemed to be getting overweight. He had trouble with mobility. He was in a wheelchair in some of the last, most recent photos of him. So I knew that he wasn't in great shape, but he's also only in his 60s and was hoping that, he could still live a little while here. So getting the news of his passing today, I can't say was a huge shock, because we all knew that, he was old and he was in bad health. But it's still horribly painful because without Howard Finkel, the great moments that we remember throughout history that are etched in our brain, they might not be that etched without Howard Finkel, because his legendary calls, especially when someone would win the title, and new, oh my God, when you heard that, especially like in the 80s, it would literally make your heart sink, because title changes aren't like they are now, where you get 14 of them in 1 week. Back then, they were few and far between. So when Howard would make that legendary call, it literally knocked the wind out of you, especially if a heel won. I'll never forget when he announced Honky Tonk Man as the Intercontinental Champion after he beat Ricky Steamboat. That was one of those moments that made my heart drop directly into my stomach. I even put on Twitter today, when we were sharing memories of Howard Finkel, I said, what are some of your favorite Howard Finkel and news? And you guys threw a bunch of them at me. One of my favorite ones was when Honky Tonk Man, after beating Steamboat, had that long run, went into SummerSlam 88 against the Ultimate Warrior in Madison Square Garden and got beat in just a matter of seconds by the Warrior. And that was a classic call by Howard Finkel. All of those Intercontinental title matches were. One of my favorite ones that I used in the intro here was from WrestleMania 8, when Bret Hart beat Piper. And even though he clearly pinned him, the camera looking at Piper, and he's kind of looking, he almost like is in disbelief, and he needs, even though he was just pinned 1, 2, 3, nothing is official until Howard Finkel makes that announcement, and you can see the crowd just react to it, and it was amazing. It's the little things that sometimes people take for granted. I think most fans appreciate and acknowledge the legendary status of Howard for sure, but, sometimes you wonder if he should have gotten even more credit than he did. Other unsung heroes like Jim Johnson, responsible for so many classic WWF theme songs that really helped get the talent over even more. Without it, they probably wouldn't have been as good. And I think Howard fits into that category. because when he makes that announcement, it really climaxes the story. I kind of have a strange favorite of Howard Finkel announcing a new champion, and that was at King of the Ring 1998 when Stone Cold defended the title against Kane. And this was a first blood match, and it was on the same show as the infamous Hell in a Cell match between Undertaker and Mankind. And everybody got involved in this. Mankind ran out there, the Undertaker ran out there, they even lowered the cell from the ceiling. And the end result sees Austin getting busted open by The Undertaker while the referee is unconscious. And then he comes to see blood all over Austin's face. And he calls for the bell. And nobody's music plays or anything. Everyone's just kind of standing in confusion. Jim Ross is like, Austin is bleeding and the title is on the line. And then Howard Finkel makes that announcement, the winner and new. And when he says and new, it combines with Austin's great reaction of chucking the chair and Jerry Lawler screaming out on commentary, whoa! All of that combined to make just the perfect shock ending to a pay-per-view. And one of my favorite endings they've ever done. Even though I was shocked as hell and I was a huge Stone Cold fan and I didn't want him to lose a title, I appreciated that moment. And Howard added so much to matches like that and to moments like that. And he's helped make a lot of guys' big WrestleMania or championship victories even that much more special by adding his little touch to it at the end. And think about how many eras this guy went through. This guy was around for Vince Sr. This guy was around for the pre-Hulk Hogan days. And then he was there all throughout the rock and wrestling era. He went through the late 80s and the early 90s. He went through the dark days in like 94 and 95 when things sucked. He was doing the ring announcing all throughout the Attitude Era and in the early 2000s as well. And all throughout those eras, he would share the duties with, like Mel Phillips and Mike McGurk and Lillian Garcia, Tony Chimmel, maybe a couple of others. But he was still really the main guy. He was the guy you wanted calling or announcing the main events. And he did for most WrestleManias, unless they would do a guest ring announcer, which they did for many main events at WrestleMania, but he still managed to announce a few. He got involved in storylines, too. The first time I remember him getting involved in any storyline was around 92, 93. He started having problems with Bruno, with Harvey Whippleman on TV. And Harvey was being an asshole, and Harvey's a little fucking twerp. And it blew my mind that he was, bullying Howard Finkel, because Howard, I think, should have kicked his ass. And that feud went on for a few years. It even culminated with a big tuxedo match in, early 95 on Raw. Pretty sure that was the same episode that William Shatner was on. I remember that Raw well. They would also have a scuffle the year prior at WrestleMania 10 in Madison Square Garden. I think Howard Finkel pushed him to the ground, and that was when Howard Finkel was wearing the toupee or the wig because they had Cy Sperling, who ironically just recently passed away, I think a couple of months ago. That's kind of ironic. Cy Sperling, who was the president of the Hair Club for Men, was one of the celebrities that year at WrestleMania, and he put a toupee on Howard, and it looked good on Howard. He got involved later on, a few years after that. I think in 98, he was the primary reason, I think, why they did the hair versus hair match at SummerSlam with X-Pac and Jeff Jarrett. Because I think Jarrett had bullied Howard around or shaved off what was left of his hair, and then he got involved, and he helped X-Pac shave the head of Jeff Jarrett at SummerSlam. He did a little something with Chris Jericho for a while and was on TV here and there in comedy segments or getting involved. So they always tried to get Howard involved because he worked behind the scenes as well. He did a lot of stuff for them behind the scenes, worked in the office in Stamford. And from what everybody has ever said about him in any shoot interview that I've ever heard is that he is the most happy-go-fucking-lucky guy you have ever seen in your life. Just always in a good mood, always bebopping around. He was a mental encyclopedia of wrestling. He loved wrestling. He loved the WWE. He remembered everything and was never described as anything other than a kind, gentle, amazing human being. And unfortunately, the same can't be true for the company that he works for. And some of the controversy that's fallen on them in recent days, they've always had a history of just kind of being assholes. I've heard lots of stories, we've heard lots of stories, about how WWE and a lot of people there treated Howard Finkel like shit. I think there were times when he was bullied or made fun of or just fucked with in general. And I don't understand why people would do that to somebody like Howard. Seems like the nicest people in that company always get fucked with. I don't know what it is. But I remember hearing a few stories back in the day that just really kind of turned my stomach a little bit with some of the things that was kind of done to him. And I won't get into it here, but, it felt like he had to deal with some bullshit too. But he was always happy to be at work. He always loved wrestling unconditionally, no matter what kind of bullshit he had to deal with. I think the worst thing anybody has ever accused Howard Finkel of doing in their lives is being, annoying I have heard a few people say they didn't like Howard sometimes because he would be annoying or something. We kind of got tastes of that on Legends House a little bit. Remember Piper got all bent out of shape at him because he took the fucking front seat in the limo or whatever, and how there was a code and all this shit. I'm like, God, leave the dude alone, man. Fuck. So I felt like sometimes Howard just had crap heaped upon him for no reason, and I kind of felt bad for him at times. But his contributions didn't go unnoticed. They put him in the Hall of Fame in 2009, which was really cool. He absolutely deserves it. If you ask me, I think Howard should have gone in at the very first one they did in like 94. He was still working there at the time, but so was Strongbow and some of the agents. So I think he should have gone in then. But WWE did finally cement him as a big part of that company, and he was. He was a big part of those early days. So it's another sad day in wrestling as another major name has passed away, and especially a name from these days. You know, I think about my childhood. I think about the 80s, and I think about Andre. I think about Bobby Heenan. I think about Mean Gene Okerlund. So many of these guys now have passed away. And, you know, there's one still here that's getting up there in age too that I always think about, and that's Pat Patterson. So whatever he's up to these days, I hope he's doing well. But when it comes to a lot of these old school personalities in WWE, like Howard's, like Gene's, like Arnold Skoland, like Gorilla Monsoon, so many huge parts of not only wrestling but WWF in general, to see them, you know, kind of now passing away of just old age and bad health is just as depressing as any other death. So it sucks. So condolences go out to his family and his very, very close friends. Condolences out to his friends in WWE who worked with him for years and loved him. And I know his fans, we sure as hell did. The love was overwhelming today. He was getting so much love on social media, which was great to hear. So many wrestlers chiming in with their memories of him, some sharing pictures. So he was definitely shown respect today, and that was nice to see. And keep them coming. Hit me with all your Howard Finkel memories in the comments below. I want to know which one of his legendary calls was your favorite. Did you ever get a chance to meet the guy? What was he like? Tell me anything you want about Howard Finkel. It's another sad day in wrestling, and there aren't many more pieces in my childhood left to fall. It's really sad. So anyway, you guys take care. I'll be up here in just a couple of days for the Winged Eagle podcast. There will be plenty to discuss, I'm sure. Share with me your Howard memories, and RIP to the Fink. Peace.